Happy New Year to everybody, and welcome to the first webinar of 2026. I'm Laura Goldman. I'm the dietitian working with Premier Weight Loss, and today's topic is going to be a little different, but I think very applicable for most people who might be curious. The topic is what happens nutritionally if you pause or abruptly stop GLP-1 medications. As we talk about every week, what I like to do every week that I do a presentation is to have this mantra of remember, it's the quality of your calories that matters. And whether or not you're taking GLP-1 medications, we do want to focus on the quality of our calories because that's where we're going to see the most nutrition benefit. And it's also a habit that hopefully we can learn while taking these medicines. Today we'll be covering the following. So first, we will want to touch on some reasons why somebody might want to stop using GLP-1 medications. Also, what changes occur when these are stopped. With that in mind, we will approach some common nutritional obstacles that you might face. And also, if you have a chance to plan for this stopping, I have sort of a game plan of what to do so you can be better prepared. But even if it is an unplanned pause or stop, having this game plan ahead of time can help you overcome the potential challenges. Speaking of challenges, I also want to give you a few for the next week to try out in related to this topic. I particularly like some of these, so I'll be interested to see if anyone tries it. And then finally, as always, I do leave time at the end for any questions that you may have about this or any other nutrition-related topic. So feel free to ask. I do apologize for the frogginess of my voice today. It's that time of the year, so I hope you can bear with me because I'm actually quite excited about this topic and I hope you get some good information out of it. So first, we'll touch on why someone might be stopping a GLP-1. And there really are a multitude of reasons for this. Primarily, I think a lot of people realize that financially, these are not considered cheap medicines, and so it may be a financial decision that they have to make. There are other people who find that the side effects are just too much to bear and that it's not really worth it for them. Also, in the past at least, there have been shortages so that the availability isn't quite as reliable. That doesn't seem to be the situation currently, which is great, but that is something that we've run into before. Also, it might just be this feeling of, I want to break from this. I would like to stop and just see what's going on. And some people may decide, well, I've reached my goal. I would like to try and do this on my own. And you might have a different reason that's not listed here. I should mention, of course, that GLP-1 medications are not really intended to be a temporary fix. Just like medicine for your blood pressure or cholesterol, your diet and your exercise will matter to see your success, of course, but they are likely needed long-term, potentially lifetime. However, that I do know some people who are able to pause or stop temporarily or make some adjustments for maintenance. And so whether or not it's planned or unplanned, let's try and be prepared and proactive if you do need to stop a GLP-1. So of course I want to touch on those changes that will happen if you stop them. Of course, since these medications are designed to mimic hormones that our bodies make but last much, much longer, so we're talking days instead of minutes, it might take a little while before you see or feel those changes. But to do a quick recap on these hormones that our bodies, that it's mimicking, what it does is it mimics the hormones that slow our gastric emptying and also reduce our appetite or that food noise that people talk about. So that craving for food, some people have described it as almost an itch that you can't scratch. And the GLP-1s help sort of make you not notice the itch any longer. And also, this mimics hormones that can improve insulin sensitivity. So when you do stop one of these medications, it will clear the body completely after about a month or so. Sometimes a little less, but about a month or so. So in a few days or a few weeks or in a couple of weeks, you'll notice the appetite increasing. In fact, some of you may notice your appetite increasing at the end of a week after you've taken an injection. So it does depend on the person. And the appetite is affected by hormones such as ghrelin and leptin. And we'll touch on those a little bit in the next slide, I believe. Then also in 4 to 5 weeks, your gastric emptying rate will probably return back to the way it used to be. So you might not feel fuller for longer. Some people welcome this because it can be uncomfortable to feel overly full, but that's when you might notice that. And also, there is a glycemic control issues. So if somebody is using these medications to manage their blood sugar, then stopping this can cause your blood sugars to be very variable. And that's this graph that I have off to the right where it shows basically changes in someone's hemoglobin A1C, which is a measure of one's blood sugar. And of course, taking it over a period of time and then stopping taking it, you can see that the A1C will increase. So for someone who is managing their blood sugars with these medicines, it's very important to be in touch with a healthcare provider so that the blood sugars can continue to be managed if they're stopping a GLP-1. Now to touch on those two hormones that I talked about, which I think can be very important, and it's important to sort of see what's going on here. We're talking about ghrelin and leptin. And ghrelin is a hormone that's produced by the gut. It's essentially basically the only gut hormone that is saying, I'm hungry. Most others are either appetite suppressing or sort of a neutral, but ghrelin is one that increases your appetite. And leptin is basically it's created by your fat cells and it circulates through your body. And of course, if you lose weight, if you lose fat mass, you're going to lose the amount of leptin that your body creates. And when your body senses a decrease in leptin from where it used to be, that can also increase your appetite. And so when people lose weight from diet alone or are calorie restricting in an attempt to lose weight, which when we're taking GLP-1s, we're also calorie restricting through our diet. This can lead to ultimately a decrease in your leptin and increase in ghrelin. Now, you're not going to notice anything necessarily, and I saw a few studies that indicated that perhaps ghrelin is sort of hushed a little bit with the usage of GLP-1s, but the appetite indicators you're not really going to notice when taking them. However, if you stop, that sort of the quieting of that appetite isn't going to last there as long. I gave here an example. Now, this is not related to the GLP-1 medications, but this is just an example of what you can see in terms of hunger and in terms of ghrelin, especially with weight loss. And I'm not going to go too deep into it, but it is a very interesting study. And it was published in 2011. And what they did was a very, very low calorie diet for about 10 weeks, 500 to 550 calories, which sounds pretty tough. And they have a baseline, which was before their weight loss, and then weeks 10 and week 62, where they measured their perception of hunger or their appetite. And this is after, how many minutes after eating. And then the ghrelin also, this was measured in the body and basically the change in the circulating levels over time. So you can see that compared to baseline, the appetite is about the same. The ghrelin is running higher afterwards. And so it's pretty striking to see that. And that's one of those battles I think that's hard for many people to fight, because this can show you it's not necessarily about willpower, because you've got hormones that are sort of, I don't want to say screaming, but hormones that are talking very loudly and encouraging you to eat. And after this study was done, there was an average weight regain of about 12 pounds, give or take. So we were talking about those physiological changes, and to translate it into the nutritional obstacles, like we were talking about, like I was hammering on, the appetite rebound, I think might be one of the biggest obstacles people will encounter, because that increase in the cravings, the increased thought of food is going to come back. And that can do with the hormones, it can do with a variety of other situations, and that can be very hard for people. Again, it's like that itch comes back and the desire to scratch has returned. Also, the changes in satiety or fullness cues, so you might not feel satisfied or satiated for as long, and that desire to maybe have a snack before, whereas you may not have before, can occur. And digestive adjustments is that since you may have been eating much smaller portions since your appetite was lower, if your appetite is increasing and you're not monitoring your portions, which I will definitely encourage you to do so, but if you're not, there can be a discomfort from that sudden increase. It's something your body's not used to. And of course, the weight regain. And I was reading a variety of studies to try and find one solid number, but generally speaking, depending on which medication you're using, how much weight you lost versus when you stopped, et cetera, multiple factors here. But there was sort of an average where people would regain half or more of their previously lost weight. So if you'd lost 50 pounds, after stopping the GLP-1 medication, you may see 25 of those pounds or more come back. So with all that in mind, with the obstacles that you may encounter and not wanting to necessarily have to deal with it or face any repercussions as best you can, I encourage you to practice proactive planning, because while tapering a medication is likely ideal, so if you know you want to stop, or you want to have maybe try and do a maintenance of your weight with a little change in your regimen or whatever it may be, tapering a medication is more ideal, so you don't have these sudden feelings, hopefully, of hunger, etc. But if you're stopping, whether suddenly or gradually, it's always good to be prepared. And I think I'm going to mention this now, if I don't make it clear in a further slide, because I'm not sure the order I put it in, but what I consider GLP-1s to be best at is that they're a fantastic tool to help you practice appropriate eating behaviors, help you work on eating healthy, exercising as tolerated, and making the right nutritional choices without the interference of appetite and food noise getting in your way. And so the time while you're taking a GLP-1 medication is the time to really practice those skills, and those skills of food planning and priorities of nutrition. So that way, if you stop, you might still have those habits developed. So this is the time to check in with yourself and to ask, what are my current eating patterns? Am I paying attention to portion control, since it's very easy to underestimate the amount we're eating? And also, what new diet or lifestyle skills have I learned or started doing since being on these GLP-1 medications? Those skills are going to come in handy if you stop. Also ask yourself, what have the medications done for me? And so if it was an appetite suppression, then you'll know that you might need to be prepared for that appetite rebound. If it was about fullness, then that might be something. There are some people who say that their tastes or their desires for certain foods have changed. And so maybe it will revert back, and the foods that didn't interest you but previously maybe were a guilty pleasure, that might come back around. So find out how it worked for you so you can be prepared for what it might not be there to do. And then also ask yourself, what am I going to do if I have that increase in appetite? Do I have a plan to address that? Do I have a distraction method? Do I know that drinking enough water is going to help me? What are my thoughts here? So I recommend checking in with yourself first. Also, remember the priorities. So since we were talking about those skills and those habits to develop, it's good to know that it's about protein because that can help you feel fuller for longer. It's going to support that muscle maintenance, and it requires the most effort for your body to digest. So it actually burns the most calories while digesting. Not that that is a way to weight loss, but just be aware that it's a little bit less of a quick fix like a simple carbohydrate would be. Meal timing also, if you stop taking these medicines, and even while you're taking them, try to avoid skipping meals. But also, please, please don't eat if you're not hungry. There are some people who are not breakfast people. And if you aren't and you never have been, I'm not saying that you need to start doing that right now. But try to aim for structure versus saying that if you stop, you're only going to eat once a day. You want to have the structure and have predictability. And also, structure can lead to habits, which can lead to easier maintenance. Looking at volume and fiber can be really important, again, for fullness, but also general health. So non-starchy vegetables, those are your leafy greens, essentially. Those can add a lot of volume to your food and to your stomach, but with very, very few calories. And your fiber goals don't jump from 0 to 25, of course. Most of us don't quite meet that goal, but ideally 25 to 35 grams a day would be good to aim for. Also, hydration can be very, very important because our thirst is often perceived as hunger. And usually, if we're saying, oh, I'm feeling a little bit hungry right now, we reach for a snack and not for a drink. And so I would encourage you to at least try and drink some water first if you start to feel some pangs of hunger and it's not time for a meal. And finally, sleep is very, very important, and stress management is important because it's been shown that lack of sleep and increased stress can tend to impact our hunger hormones and can also lead to less desirable food choices, so lower quality calories. There are also things to avoid. So some red flags here is that over restriction that we might feel like we have to do. But remember, restricting calories to an extreme can lead to more hunger and more desire to eat. And so it can sort of backfire on you there. But also, and incredibly importantly, we do need food because of the nutrients it provides. And so to try and avoid it completely, as if we were treating it like the enemy, can lead to nutrient deficiencies. And that is going to lend us to be less healthy. Also, I think it's important that expecting willpower to be enough is something you want to avoid. It's often a finite resource. Most of us cannot necessarily will ourselves to always do the thing we don't want to do all the time. Whereas if it becomes a habit, then that can be a little more sustainable. You might think about, say, brushing your teeth every night or every morning. I don't think most people have to necessarily will themselves to do it in their adulthood because it has become such a habit. So trying to make these established food choices, dietary choices, and patterns have become more habitual for you and less about willing yourself to make those changes. And try to avoid abandoning structure. I know that travel or unpredictable schedules happen to all of us, but the best thing you can do for as many days as possible is to stick to a schedule, because that way you sort of know what to expect, and that sort of adds on to that habits. If every morning you're eating a certain protein heavy meal, or if there's a certain time that exercise works for you, keeping that up is going to, again, help establish those habits and also help you avoid, because if you're doing meal timing, maybe meal planning, then you're not going to be making last minute dietary decisions and having to pick up something at a fast food restaurant on the way home. Also involved in planning is perhaps your support team. So feel free to identify who you can lean on. That includes your healthcare team. Maybe it's doctors or nurses, myself or another dietitian, maybe at Premier Weight Loss, or your family care physician, someone that you trust there, or if you have a therapist. Or maybe there's a support group you're involved with, friends or family members that have been supportive or understand your journey. Know the ones that you can lean on and trust. Also, if you're going to have a healthcare team that you can lean on and trust, be sure to have an honest conversation with those providers about, I don't know if I want to restart the medication. I don't know if I can, depending on your reason for stopping, but I want to know the possibility of resuming it or when, and also what would that look like? When is that decision made? And so I think for both you and your healthcare team, ask about the definition of weight maintenance, and especially what does that mean for you? Does weight maintenance mean that you can have a 5 or 10 pound fluctuation, or does it mean staying within 1 or 2 pounds? Typically, I've heard one suggested, there's no solid definition, but one suggested weight maintenance is no more than 3% of gain of weight. So ask yourself that to know when you would want to make adjustments or reach out to somebody and say, hey, I think I need to do something differently. We're already approaching the end, so my challenges to you, you can pick one or all for this next week, is first, audit your current habits. So list 3 eating or lifestyle behaviors that you have started up or picked up on since taking these GLP-1 medications that, of course, that don't rely on them. So is it prioritizing protein? Is it about portion control or changing the plate size? Or is it about going for a walk after eating? What are some lifestyle behaviors that you have changed since starting them? And what are they that you can continue doing? Also, hunger is a reality. And so if that appetite really comes back in force, you got to have a plan for that. So try and list out 3 ways that you can deal with that increased appetite. Is it good to get away from the kitchen and go for a walk? Maybe call and catch up with somebody, like a friend. Like I mentioned earlier, try and drink water or tea or some low caloric beverage. Chewing sugar-free gum can help some people, because the idea is to avoid idle hands. If the food is available and nearby and you're not preoccupied doing something else, it's an easy thing to go to. So try and find ways that you can address that. And thirdly, identify your support team. Give me one moment. I'm sorry about that. So, thirdly, identify your support team. Find those healthcare providers that you can trust. And perhaps schedule some check ins now so that way you'll know when to check in and see how things are going. And I made it to the end with my voice. But of course, I want to leave this open to you. If you have any questions, feel free to send them along with hitting that question at the bottom of the left hand of your screen, I believe. And I'll wait here for just a few minutes. Of course, if they come up later, or if you think of them later, please reach out to the Premier Weight Loss staff. They'll be happy to get you in touch with me, or they may also have the answers for you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.